So I'll move on now to item 1.1. Do we have any declarations of interest or transparency statements? I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll move on to item 1.2, minute of the previous board meeting of the 19th of February. Are we happy to agree that, or are there any points which anyone wishes to raise? Agreed. Thank you. We don't have a presentation this meeting, so we'll move on to budget matters. 3.1, 24-25 budget matters, and I'll pass on to Jenny to take us through that briefly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This report is to provide the board with an update on the 24-25 budget monitoring. The summary statement of income and expenditure is given in Appendix 1 and shows spend to the end of February of almost 4.2 million. Appendix 2 shows the spend to end of February and forecast outturn for the 24-25 People in Place grant, but it is noted that there is agreement to use some forecast underspend for other suitable projects, with the intention being that Nestrans will claim the grant in full. Nestrans also suggested reallocating the spend incurred this year on developing the regional active travel network to help offset some predicted underspend within the overall national programme. As a result, a further grant offer of 60,000 was received and accepted. Full details of the final amounts claimed will be confirmed at the next board meeting in June. Appendix 3 sets out the projects where further continuation of funding from the 24-25 financial year to the now current 25-26 financial year is requested, along with a short comment as to the particular reason for each request. The board is asked to note the monitoring position and forecast presented in Appendices 1 and 2, note the additional grant funding for the 24-25 People in Place programme, and to approve the continuation of funding to the next financial year to complete the projects presented in Appendix 3. And thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions on this report.
Thank you. And do we have any questions at all? Yep, Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. More a comment, if you may. It was just to say well done, I think, in having put together such a comprehensive and amazing programme for active travel, and then to go and get more funding for the area. So it was just to say well done on that, and let's see how it all goes going forward. But good work.
So can we agree the recommendations from that? Thank you very much. And back on to 3.2, 25-26 budget matters, and back to Jenny. Thank you.
Thanks again. This report advises the board on the funding allocations to Nestrans for the 25-26 financial year that have been confirmed, and discusses proposals for usage of funds from the general reserves. The board approved proposed budgets for 25-26 when they last met in February, subject to anticipated funding levels being confirmed. Both councils have now set their budgets, and although a formal offer of grant is yet to be received from the Scottish Government, it has been confirmed that it will be retained at the previous year's levels. The coordination and project development budget agreed in February can therefore be progressed, and should the carry forward from 24-25 within the previous report have been agreed, this will bring the total budget to almost 1.1 million. Following confirmation of council funding, the allocation for the Strategic Investment Programme by Aberdeenshire Council, which has been retained at previous year's level, now exceeds the budget approved in February. It's proposed to use this additional £572,000 to install previously purchased timber bridge kits on the Formartine and Buchan Way, and for an active travel link in Inverurie between Corsman Hill and Dava Wood. The board asked that plans for use of the reserves in excess of the general reserves minimum of 200,000 that was established in February be developed. This currently amounts to around 750,000, and in developing proposals with officers from both councils for consideration, the following points were thought relevant. The risk to delivery if too much is allocated in a single year. The benefit of having reserves if making bids that require a level of match funding. Reserves may help the transition for projects that have been funded to date using Aberdeen City Region Deal Strategic Transport Appraisal monies, as this will end in March 2027, and the availability of reserves if significant funding for more strategic interventions is required. It's therefore considered prudent to plan for drawing down the reserves over a period of 4 to 5 years, and proposals are presented for allocating 100,000 to each council in the year ahead from the reserves. This is in the form of an additional allocation to the A96 Dice Cycle Track project within Aberdeen, and as a contribution towards Aberdeenshire Tier 2 active travel project bids, with exact details to be reported to a future board once the outcome of this bid is known. Should this be approved, and along with the carry forward from 24-25 in the previous report, it would bring the strategic investment programme budget to just over £3.5 million. Further reports will of course be brought to future meetings should the need arise to request further allocations from reserves this financial year. At the time of writing, a formal offer of grant is still to be received for the people in place grant, but it had been indicated that the total capital and revenue amounts allocated to Nestrans and used to develop the submitted proposals as shown in Appendix A have been agreed. I'm pleased to update the board that the grant offer was received yesterday, although the resource allocation has been slightly reduced nationally. The reduction to Nestrans allocation is around £4,620 lower, which is less than a 1% reduction and not considered significant to review the proposed programme as shown in Appendix A at this stage. This will bring the Strategic Investment Programme budget to just over £5.7 million. The board has been asked to note the funding towards Nestrans that have been confirmed for 25-26, approve the proposed projects for use of the additional 572,000 allocated by Aberdeenshire Council, to agree to proposals to profile usage of funds from the general reserves over a period of 4 to 5 years into the allocation of 200,000 in 25-26 for the suggested projects, and to note the grant funding amount that's been advised will be awarded in 25-26 through the People in Place programme and the proposals submitted for consideration as shown in Appendix A, although based on my update today that has slightly changed, but by such an insignificant amount that we could probably work to the current proposals as they stand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Martin?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask about the use of reserves. So does that proposal still retain a healthy level of reserves within the parameters of the reserves policy? It's not really clear.
We requested a minimum amount of 200,000 be retained. There's actually 750,000 in excess of that, but we haven't allocated the full 750. We've only allocated 200 of it, so that would leave 750,000 still.
So is that regarded as a comfortable percentage then for?
Yeah, probably in excess, but for the reasons that we were given, we didn't want to draw it all down this financial year.
Thanks. Thank you.
Sandra?
I wanted to ask about the listed Appendix A, and I just wondered if there were other organisations who weren't successful in getting onto that list. And also, I'd just like to know a little bit more about Tired and Cranky, which was a rather appealing name to an organisation.
I'm not sure if one of my colleagues that reviewed the expressions of interest would rather comment on the.
Yeah, Tired and Cranky's SCIO formed, I think, in 2021. It's two individuals, community enterprise, mobile, adaptable, flexible, creative, kind of bike repair, bike loan, bike library facility. Being primarily Aberdeenshire focused, but they also have worked in the city previously. In one example, they'll actually be in the city on Saturday at an event at the Cycle Hub at Seaton, along with other partners as well.
Thanks. My other question was really around: are there others that just missed out that might be considered in future or so on, or did it tend to cover the ones who hit the criteria? These are the ones that are on Appendix A. Is that correct?
Councillor MacDonald, we had a bidding process for the schemes in Appendix A. So we cast our net wide around that one. And actually, I think that the ones who fell above the line and fell below the line were actually quite clear in this instance. I mean, there were a few marginal ones, but we were able to resolve that at that point. What we are doing, though, and you might have seen on our social media, is we've gone out again to smaller community organisations to fulfil what we call the community fund within the People and Places. So that really is for grants perhaps up to £10,000. So that's far more grassroots than some of the more established national or regional organisations. And we hope to be able to assist those with either behaviour change or other small scale projects there. There's a couple in Appendix A you could see already, like the church who are doing hospital lifts and some of these things. So I was really quite excited about that and about how we can get that reach to that side of things. But again, we continue to keep our eyes open for new opportunities, and Nestrans also runs a sustainable travel grant and a sort of community travel grant on top of this. So again, there's opportunities throughout the year to capture those who might have come a bit late or other opportunities as we go ahead.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
Thank you. Isabel.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was really on the same vein. So these organisations, it would be really good actually if those grants are available, if you could circulate information around the board members, because we could obviously promote them in our areas and maybe widen the reach that way, because I wasn't really aware that these opportunities had been out there. So it would be good to know. You can't follow every Facebook page, and even if you do, they don't always come up with the information you want. But so these organisations have got some capital and some of them have got some revenue funding. And how long is that for? Does that continue for a while? And what's the future of that funding? Is it, time limited and then it stops at the end of it? Or is there any sort of continuation afterwards?
The People and Place grant that we've been awarded from Transport Scotland is specifically year on year. And so we have to do a reassessment if the programme continues every year of applications that come forward. And that is the nature of the grant that we've been awarded. That they're the terms of the grant, and we take it from there. We're aware that all the signs are that people are very happy with this new regional model of delivery of behaviour change. So we'd like to think that Scottish Government and Transport Scotland will continue this working arrangement, and that in turn allows us to continue to grow and deepen relationships with people whom we've been working with. And I think a significant proportion of the people on that list are actually people whom we have relationships developed with, either through the regional regional RTP grant, which was the forerunner, or last year's People and Places grant. So we are developing those relationships as we go ahead. But the grant is only 1 year, a year-on-year funding.
Do you have any more questions, or are we happy to agree the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the Director of Support. Does anyone have any questions on that? Sandra?
Kind of guessing that we've maybe had the People in Place leadership group update, but there was a meeting yesterday. I just wondered if there was anything else to report around that. Thank you.
It was it was a good meeting. Transport Scotland were looking for just general reflections from each of the other regional transport partnerships on how things had been going over the past year. There was some discussions about how we're going to execute the evaluation report coming forward as well. We're hoping to present the interim evaluation report to our June board, because that is due to be prepared in June. So we'll take this to that one as well. There are a couple of school-related projects that won't be fully captured within that report and probably fall into the September board. So I think there was quite a lot of reflections about that, reflections on how different organisations had responded to the opportunities of People in Place, those who had perhaps thrived under the new funding arrangements, and those perhaps where it was a bit more of a struggle for them to make an adaptation from the time. But generally, Scottish Transport Scotland officials were very happy with the way that schemes have been prescribed, but also subscribed and signed up to. And again, we'll come to it later, but they were very happy with the Huntley event, where we were able to showcase the work that we've been doing, thanks to my colleagues in that respect as well. So there was a general, this is good, let's keep developing it. And yeah, people are up for it.
Martin?
Thank you, Michael. A very busy diary there, a lot going on. One theme that I'm noticing that's coming up is the one on meetings relating to healthy weight and obesity and so forth. And I'm wondering if there's been opportunity to think through some of the information that's being provided in those mainly community planning meetings, given that Aberdeen City Council is certainly putting quite a significant focus on this area with a new whole systems approach to encourage healthy lifestyles, and active travel and green transport fits into that very much. And it's been quite clearly identified that there does need to be special focus and targeting on areas of multiple deprivation. So I just wondered if there had been any kind of holistic thinking coming out of these decisions that might help, that could be integrated into some of the ongoing work.
It's absolutely fantastic that on a number of fronts, Nestrans has been invited to contribute to these meetings. It's really good that we've got a really strong and effective partnership with Public Health Scotland in the northeast through our Health and Transport Action Plan, and that's enabled us to be in amongst these discussions. I'd say not only that, but both in Aberdeenshire Community Council and a community planning partnership and Aberdeen City Community Planning Partnership, in terms of the charters we're working on, again, we're able to be at the table contributing our ideas, and particularly for Nestrans, highlighting and flagging the work of the People and Place programme, which you've just heard about, and trying to integrate the learning of that into some of the activities that have been undertaken, and particularly in those more deprived areas that affect both Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen City Council. Caroline, is there anything more you'd like to say on that? Because I know you've been active on some of these meetings.
I can add in some information about the schools-based work that's ongoing. There was a lot of interest in the Healthy Weight Aberdeen meetings on the schools-focused initiatives that we have in People in Place and how they can encourage children and young people to walk or travel actively. And this was regarded by participants in those meetings as being something important. And we've got some really good partnership working with the team at Healthy Weight Aberdeen on demonstrating how our active and sustainable travel policies can contribute to the wider systems thinking that's ongoing.
That's all really encouraging to hear. I mean, there is also that next step beyond schools, which is the family-centred approach, which we're developing through that whole systems strategy. And I mean, I'm just wondering, maybe in the longer term, it might be possible to gather some of the data from schools, from communities, to help support some of the funding decisions, so that we know that we're very clearly targeting our resource where it will make a difference. And we do have to give a special focus to various geographic areas, because green transport is part of placemaking, and we do need to engage with families here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any hands, any more hands, so can we agree to note that? Thank you very much, and we'll move on now to 4.2, the business plan. And Paul, can you give us a quick introduction?
Thank you very much, Chair. Previously, we've produced business plans on an annual basis, but they've been wrapped up with our annual report back to the Scottish Government. And so we've often missed the benefit of these business plans, because they really should be set at the beginning of the financial year to sort of set out our vision and the issues and the challenges and our resources going forward. Certainly, this is something that has been picked up by auditors, and so we said, yes, we'll bring forward the business plan element of that and present it to the board at an earlier date. So actually, that can help guide our strategic direction for the year ahead. The attached business plan is generally split into 3 areas. We talk about our statutory roles and what we're obliged to do. We've linked our RTS actions to the budget that we're working to. And we're also highlighting some of our partnership working as well within the latter stages of the business plan. In terms of issues, highlight the staffing issues at the moment that we're working through. Public sector funding is certainly pervading a lot of the environment that we're working in at the moment, both in terms of the two councils and that understanding of how Team North East fits into that as well. Climate change, climate resilience continue to be very important themes that we are responding to. And as we've just heard, that focus on public health, transport outcomes and access to health as well is another dominant theme within the partnership working that we're doing as well. We're seeing more and more focus on energy transition as well, and the impacts of energy transition on our infrastructure. And that could be through the transmission network, it could be through our ports and harbours, or on and offshore wind opportunities as well. And as we've also just discussed, the amount of bandwidth that we're putting into the People and Place programme as well, which is welcome, but again it has an impact on the work that we're doing. A lot of the delivery that we do is directly associated with local authority capabilities. And also we have to be aware that a lot of our major infrastructure aspirations are also tied up with national body decisions such as Transport Scotland and Network Rail. And we continue to be active in that area of economic development, land use planning and community planning as well, because transport sits at the nexus of all those aspects. So they're the key issues that are within the report, and hopefully we set out in that business plan how these issues will be dealt with in the coming year and how we will apply resource to that. And I'm happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any questions at all? I'm seeing a hand online, but I can't see. Is it Colin? Is it? Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to read for you. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a good business plan there. Just wondering about the section on zero fertility. I can't even say it. Safety on the roads. We kind of looks like we've kind of plateaued and going up since the COVID years. With the 20 mile an hour and other speed restrictions that are coming in this year in the Aberdeenshire area, do we think we're going to hit that 2030 target quicker than that? Because it doesn't look like a huge step change down from the 2023s to 2030s. With the amounts of the less fatalities that have been recorded in Wales, do you think we'll come down to that quicker than 2030?
Thanks, Colin. You might have just slipped onto the monitoring report rather than the business plan.
Oh, sorry.
But I think it's a really pertinent point, because we know that road safety casualty reduction, we have had previously enjoyed some good performance in that area, but we do know of the recent uptick in these issues. It is very important that we therefore continue to focus on causality and some of the issues, and we're working with the Road Safety North East Scotland collaboration to understand that. And I do think that the rollout of those 20 mile an hour zones that is happening across both the local authorities, will be a significant and positive impact on those things. However, there is a reason why we often look at the 5-year rolling average, because that helps to take away some of the random elements of the collisions and these incidents. So yes, you're right to highlight it as an issue, and across all the partners at the moment, it very much is an issue that we're very much focused on at this particular time. And speed reduction and other measures are a key component of that, Colin. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry for dropping into the next report.
And Sandra.
whilst we're having that debate, I just wanted to ask whether we knew from the Welsh experience what the evaluation and monitoring and enforcement of 20 miles per hour, was that a factor in their experience? Because it's certainly a factor that I think we haven't put enough emphasis on, about welcoming 20 miles per hour. But if you're not going to enforce that or have enough resources to do that, you might get a reduction, but if you really want to see a difference, then you need to make that work. And I'm not sure we're doing that as a society, or as local government and national government together at all at the moment. So it'd be interesting to know the Welsh experience.
I think the Welsh experience has been very interesting because they came out very early, and it was a very high profile national debate that they were having a lot of emphasis on it. So there's no doubt that people were aware that this was coming just because of that. So there was that high awareness. And then there was obviously that issue about, as you say, about the enforcement. I'm not as aware of how they've enforced it and how that's gone forward. I don't know if Caroline's read anything on that one, or John perhaps on that aspect. No. We would have to come back to you on that one. I think it's a very interesting, as Colin's picked up. Ewan, have you anything that you come across?
Thanks so much, Paul. And yeah, very, very relevant question in terms of what we're, so nationally across all the authorities in Scotland, they are looking carefully at and linking in with colleagues in Wales. We've had presentations from, I think it's at Swansea University through Public Health Scotland. So they've shared that. So there wasn't a dedicated enforcement regime as such, but what there has been is the publicity campaigns and the educational side of things. So they have seen a reduction in the overall speeds, and the initial statistics have shown that they've seen a reduction in the number of collisions within the urban areas. But I say that is early days. The experience in Scotland from Borders Council area in particular, so they'd done a formal evaluation when they were one of the early pilot areas. So they saw certainly the reduction in speeds by, I think, up to about 4 miles an hour typically across different locations, but that wasn't followed through into a similar level of reductions in collisions. But primarily that was because they started from a very low level of collisions. So the statistical significance of it. So to give the assurance, the teams in both authorities will be looking at all of that information along with other local authorities in Scotland. So.
Thanks very much for the answer. And just to reflect, this morning over breakfast, my husband said to me, I don't think people out there know what's coming with 20 mile an hour reductions. And I think that's, we do because we've seen the consultation and so on. But I just don't think, and it's out for consultation at the moment in the city, but I just don't think, the general public. So we really need to do what Ewan's outlined to make people aware, not just when it happens, but that it is happening and that it's being done at the moment. And I just don't feel that is particularly well understood by the people outside this room, to be frank.
Isabel, John.
Yeah, it's really going back to the business plan, and it's the rail and bus networks, and we've spoken a number of times here about accessibility improvements to in-station, and the UK government have said that they're not going to do them, at least for the next, I think, 10 years or more. And I wonder if that's something we were going to look at. There was word of looking at a different way of achieving that. So, is that something that we could have in our plan in some way, maybe not quite directly, but at least not forget about it altogether. And also when we come to the bus network, it kind of tends to concentrate quite a bit on the city, and the Shire is really quite struggling at the moment for bus network. Stagecoach have narrowed what they do to an extent, which is understandable because they struggle for staff, they struggle for passengers, and it's difficult for them to maintain a good bus network. So what can we do to improve the bus networks within the whole of the Shire. South of the Shire, it seems to be getting more and more of these airport connectors, and certainly the Ember one goes round the villages. I don't know if the other ones will, but can we not do something similar in the north, or encourage some of these organisations to do something similar in the north, so that they've got a virtual or almost a demand responsive bus service throughout the northeast? I'm just concerned that it's got a bit forgotten in here and concentrated very much city centric.
Thanks for the questions there, Councillor Davidson. In terms of Inch, you'll be aware that Network Rail are undertaking, I think it's set out in this document, the accessibility work at Inverurie Station. And that is, if any of the accessibility works or anything to go by, that will probably culminate in sort of stairs and lifts and access to both sides of things. When we met with Network Rail on site, however, they were acutely aware of the issue at Inch, and they were trying to see about how they might be able to alleviate some of the issues at Inch by looking at how the connections through to Inch from Inverurie could be improved, or that there was about some more responsive taxi service or some other form of linkage was there. We did a very detailed stag assessment on Inch, and we thought, and we presented that to Transport Scotland, and we had hoped that that would have made the case for Inch being bumped higher up in their prioritisation. But as you recall, that was disregarded, that wasn't taken forward. So we are back to lobbying for Inch for physical improvements, but I think the opportunity for that happening, as you say, will be some years away before we get another chance. But then to work with what we have and seeing how much we can get for the benefit of Inch accessibility out of the work they're doing at Inverurie. So that's that aspect. I noticed for the bus network, and we know that Aberdeenshire launched their public transport strategy very recently as well. The key to that, I would suggest, is through the bus service improvement partnerships we're working on at the moment, and trying to get those agreements with Stagecoach in terms of levels of service provision, reductions in cancellations, and just that reliability of service at this particular stage. Obviously, in the longer term, we consider to look about things like franchising, but I think the key mechanism at the moment would be through BSIPs, and the other aspect of improvement would be lobbying Transport Scotland around their bus policy, because Transport Scotland's bus policy does seem to be very focused on, if you are fortunate to have a bus, then we will support you with concessionary fares, but it doesn't seem to be mature enough to think about how can we support areas, either demand services or flexible services, which don't have bus services. So there's this mismatch in where the resource is going in terms of the support for concessionary fares. They are welcomed, but there needs to be consideration of how can we extend the bus network more reliably into other areas. As you say, innovative approaches might be the way to do that. But that will require sort of funding support for the local authorities to achieve that.
If I could come back, I believe that the government has reduced the compensation for the concessionary fares as well, which isn't going to help the matter in any way. So, you know, it does need a very different approach. So the public can't really feed in to the bus alliance. You know, how do they? We have bus forums. There's another one coming up in the next few weeks, and that's really good. But it's just question and answer. It doesn't really make a difference, and we need some method of actually making a difference, because at the moment we're not making a difference.
Obviously, the both of the public transport units are represented on that on the bus alliance, and that's probably where the best opportunity is for taking those sort of changes through, both within the bus companies themselves, but also that lobbying position around the table with the organisations at that point.
Yep, I'm not seeing any more hands for questions. Are we happy? Oh, apologies, sorry, Alan.
Okay, so I'll say first of all, I mean, the business plan's got a lot of things in it. Yeah, I did my. But the thing I always look at is at the end of the year, late in the year, we'll look back and say, right, have we actually achieved our business plan? Have we made a difference? And I'm wondering, what's our, would priorities be the word? You know, be looking for, what would be our priorities? If I took everything in here, what would be the top 5 priorities? Just, you know, because I'm used to sort of like saying of a business plan, here's my key focus points. We've got everything in. Is it as simple as the way we've listed it in terms of item 1, 2, 3, 4? No, that's not the section numbers, but you get my gist of where I'm going. Or is it as we'll work it through and financially our projects are at under 100% or at 79% or whatever? What's our metric versus our business plan?
Yes, I'm aware of that performance indicator metric probably hasn't followed through from our previous formatting of the business plans. However, I think that we would look across in terms of the format is definitely in case of have we spent our budget? How are we doing in terms of delivery? So that's it. I think the next one is how are we improving our performance with terms of active travel, delivery and performance. I think that's another key metric to work with. And I think another third one will be how effectively are we working with our on partnerships as well. Now, I think we need to be effective in the realms of community planning. We need to continue the effectiveness with our partners in NHS as well as economic elements. I think a fourth metric will be, have we seen any progress on some of these major projects in terms of that relationship with Transport Scotland and Network Rail as well. And I think that the fifth one, where I'd like to see some more progress, which we haven't seen as much progress as want, something I'm particularly interested in is about making some progress with that climate change resilience, because I think that's been a bit of a Cinderella subject, and that's something that concerns me. There are, other aspects as well, but there are perhaps 5 aspects that are come to me as being important as we go forward.
So would the intention be to put that as a separate document this year?
If you think it's worthwhile for the draft business plan, I'm quite happy to draft up something to include within that, Alan, if that's something that's useful.
I just look at it myself. I mean, how do I evaluate performance? When I accept that there's a certain amount of this is reactionary, I take on board, what Councillor Davidson and others have said. But I think part of when I look ahead with my business is, what's my key targets? And that is sort of like, that sets it. Your metrics then come from your key targets. So I'm fine that it's separate. It's just I don't want to lose sight of it. That's the key.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on board.
Miranda?
Thanks. It's just a brief transparency statement. I've just found my own post-it note on my papers. I'm also a council appointed board member of the City Region Deal Joint Committee. So just a quick transparency statement with regard to this paper. Thank you.
Getting noted just now. Do you have any other questions or transparency statements? Are we happy to agree the report? Great. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the RTS monitoring. Caroline, do you want to give us a reintroduction?
Thank you, Chair. This report presents to the board the 3rd monitoring report for the regional transport strategy. Under the 6 RTS priorities, there are 20 indicators which seek to measure the effectiveness of policies and interventions. For each, a baseline and targets have been set where appropriate, alongside some interim 2030 targets. As you will note from the monitoring dashboard, a link which is included in the report, 13 of the 20 indicators are progressing positively towards identified targets. However, as previously noted, officers continue to monitor the road casualty data as this becomes available due to increases in the number of people killed and seriously injured on the region's roads in 2023, 2024, and clearly the number of fatalities on the region's roads to date this year. Through Road Safety North East Scotland, there is ongoing work in partnership to identify and address the contributory factors to serious and fatal collisions in the region. Should the board have any questions about specific areas of the data in the report, I am of course happy to answer these. It is recommended that the board note the content of this report, approve the RTS monitoring report set out in Appendix 1, and approve the publication of the monitoring report on the Nestrans website and a wider dissemination of findings. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions on this report.
Thank you for that. And do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Are we happy to agree that report? Oh, Sandra, sorry.
It's just a picky thing. I see the picture we have on the front of our monitoring report, but I always like to see people, not just infrastructure. And if there had been somebody standing at that bus stop, it would have probably worked. But just to throw that into the mix. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move. We're happy to agree that report then. Agreed. Thank you very much. 4.4 qualities. Are we? Do we have any questions on that? Sandra.
Thank you very much, Chair. And not particularly on the report, Michael, but just to mention the piece of the Supreme Court ruling last week, and to ask whether, as an organisation, we will be, as we get the guidance and so on, be looking into all our policies and processes and services to protect single-sex spaces as that is part of the Act. So just to throw that out there and to get an initial reaction from yourself, Paul.
Yeah, we obviously note that it's been across the news, and we'll be anticipating guidance from the Equalities Commission and take that one forward. I think that's something that the First Minister said he's going to prioritise. So we'll await that guidance and see how that applies to Nestrans. Probably apply more to our partner organisations in terms of the practical implementation, but as if there is anything within the offices or the arrangements that Nestrans has control over, we'll obviously take account of that as a legal obligation.
Martin.
I think just to go back to the earlier point, I think it's very good to see highlighted the issue of transport poverty, which is in this report, and I think it's particularly helpful to be gathering that data on quintiles and percentages so that we can really give a focus. Thanks.
Just having a quick look around for any more hands. I'm not seeing any. Are we happy to agree the report? Great. Thank you very much. Item 5.1, people in place. And I'll pass on to John to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Members will recall that previous updates were given throughout 24-25 that outlined the progress made in creating and delivering the first year of the People in Place programme. Some of the previous updates have included the respective quarterly reports that Nestrans is required to provide to Transport Scotland. Our report for quarter 4 was submitted on the 15th of April, and due to the deadlines for that and this board, it was not possible to include it in these papers. However, it's our intention to include it in the reports for the June board. Some projects, because they're being delivered in the school setting and clearly linked to the academic year with 24-25 monies, are continuing through school term 4, which ends on 4th of July this year. In respect to 25-26, members will recall previous reports that described our planning for the year ahead. More recently, we've had an all-partner inception meeting where we could discuss the projects that have been supported in the round and determine, in its simplest terms, who does what and where to achieve the maximum effect and impact. Now that we've got our grant offer, we need to do more of that. The supported projects are listed and has been spoken about earlier. The recommendations are to note the ongoing reporting for the programme and the plan to provide a thorough evaluation report on the first year, Note the successful event in Huntly on the 12th of March to celebrate the programme and the partners' hard work. And note that planning is well underway for the 25-26 programme, including the further public request for applications to the Community Fund. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Martin.
Thank you. Looking at the table, it's on page something. Appendix. Thank you. Just looking at the table, you get the impression that the city is not giving much of a priority to work-based themes. Any feedback on that?
I don't think that's something that's unique to the city. I think a number of partners spoke during the past year of their struggle to get in to workplaces, and we've kind of built that into our kind of planning for 25-26. So workplaces are difficult for partners to get into. Various reasons for that, but that's been certainly mentioned by several partners.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that there can be challenges. I mean, I would have thought that some of these items are actually work related, like cycle storage facilities and so forth. So there may be a bit of ambiguity out there. There might be a grey area, but it's reassuring to know that this area is being looked at for the future, and our situation is shared with others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more hands. Quick check along to the screen as well. Are we happy to agree the report? Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to 6.1 Real Matters Update. Do we have any questions on this? Sandra.
Might be a bit more of a comment, I guess, because we're coming up to 10 years where we've been talking about the 200 million that was going to significantly help us to connect with the Central Belt. And it is disappointing, I think, just to reflect on that. We're not quite at the 10 years yet, but you know, there are some things happening, but it tends to be, you know, one step forward, two steps back sometimes. And whilst there are, you know, other things happening, that initial thought of really reducing the times and making the trains the way to travel has not materialised in the way that I think we hoped in Nestrans it would. And whether there's a question in there about how much more we can do, I'm not really sure, but it is, you know, I'm just possibly recording my disappointment that we still are where we are in terms of the Central Belt upgrade project.
Yeah, I think I would share your disappointment. The programme started off slowly. Network Rail then did a very solid piece of work that outlined how this might be achieved and how we might take it forward. But since then, the Transport Minister and the funding constraints have really taken the timescale away from it, and we await any announcement on the outcome of how they will take it forward in terms of that review. So yes, I think it is a disappointment for the region, because connectivity to this region from the Central Belt is so important for our workforce, for our economy, for tourism, for all these growth sectors that we're hoping to achieve. This is also a part of the decarbonisation strategy for the area as well, because this, of course, was linked to the decarbonisation plan as well. Obviously, we're in a different situation as we were 10 years with public finances, but still it is important that when we do have our stakeholder meetings and any other opportunities, we continue to raise this matter, I think, both with the ministers or whatever point, because it was a key part of the city region deal that was agreed in 2016.
Miranda.
Thank you. I was going to raise similar points to Sandra, but I will leave them there. It's just around the Aberdeen to Lawrence Kirk multimodal corridor study. Obviously, there's the railway station at Cove that's coming through, obviously in my patch. And I guess there's an appraisal report to be presented to board in June. It's just to seek assurances that the railway station at Cove will be within the scope of that paper? And if not, when will that sort of start to come through?
The work at Cove and Newton Hill is at the heart or a key part of that appraisal report. I've seen the appraisal report, and we're now consulting with partners so that we don't have to go back and forth. So we sort the comments out, and we look forward to presenting that to you in June. And the other thing we were thinking of doing is perhaps before the next board is actually have a sort of a members teams meeting where we can get the consultants to talk through the report and provide that technical detail in advance of any questions. Not to say that we can't have them to take it there, but that's just a suggestion of how we might want to play. There's a lot of detail in there, and there's a lot of detail not just around the stations, but also the bus measures, mobility hubs, and strategic active travel stuff as well that's in that patch. So a lot going on, and that would be our suggestion.
Sandra?
It's just on the back of what Miranda said, but we haven't decided quite yet which one it's going. I mean, presumably that's part of the options appraisal that we'll be looking at, and there'll be pros and cons of both or either or none, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we'll present the work we will present the work that has been done, and I think it will be important to put that work to both councils for their consideration before we take it back and taking it forward from there. But I think it's important to keep the case for both the stations on the table and see where we get to.
Don.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few things that cropped up with this one, and they were mentioned in the monitoring report earlier as well. I'm very happy to see that the Stonehaven second ticket machine, because of accessibility issues, is being looked at, and I really hope that that manages to come through. And also the access for all, I see that Inverurie is being looked at the moment, and I would hope that the other stations that aren't fully accessible are progressed as quickly as we can. I don't know what the timescales are going to be for that, but that would be helpful to know. And also thinking about that Lawrence Kirk corridor, thinking about Lawrence Kirk and the fact that, there aren't actually that many trains that stop there, and the connectivity to Aberdeen from Lawrence Kirk isn't the best. There are no direct bus routes that go there. The coastal route is very well served by buses. Lawrence Kirk is not. Even the Ember bus does not stop at Lawrence Kirk. So whatever we can do to help the connectivity of Lawrence Kirk would be gratefully received. And if we can encourage that. I think that was all. Yes, thank you.
Yes, we continue to have discussions on the second ticket machine at Stonehaven. Access for all, I think we're probably looking in 5-year cycles. So I think we have to wait, and we need to keep on making the case, and unless there is a significant change in policy at DfT or Network Rail around that. You'll appreciate there's an awful lot of stations in the UK that are substandard. But again, we need to make the case going forward, and we need to continue to make the case for Inch, because that is the one that is most severely disadvantaged in that respect as well. In terms of Lawrence Kirk, yes, the points are well made, and it may well be that we need to continue to look at some of those issues that you have raised before, specifically in that South Mains area, and pick up some of these issues, perhaps around Ember connectivity or something along those lines, which may be linked to the flyover. But again, we need a timescale for that as well. So I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands. Are we happy to agree that report? Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to 6.2, the bus action plan. And I believe we get a short introduction from Adam.
Thank you, Chair. The bus action plan was first launched in April 2020, and this report has been brought forward to close out the bus action plan, which was set out to be a 5-year action plan. A summary is provided as part of the board papers, with the full plan uploaded to the members area. In providing this final bus action plan, there was an opportunity to provide updates on other bus matters, such as updating on BSIP progress and future plans for the bus action plan, providing an ART update through the committee report produced for Aberdeen City Council's Net Zero Environment and Transport Committee, recent liaison between officers with officers at Transport Scotland, and highlight the results of the Your Bus Journey survey conducted by Transport Focus during 2024. There are 5 recommendations set out within the report for members to agree. Thank you, Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And do we have any questions? Sandra?
So if we had a report card, what do you reckon for the 5 years that we would get for our bus action plan? There seems, there's a lot happened, but there's also, some things that maybe haven't happened in the way we would want as well. Would there be any feeling around that in pros and cons of the plan?
I think there's always room for improvement, but I think there's definitely positives that have come through the bus action plan. I think I was quite positive with the amount of things I was able to highlight as green as actually complete, which I think is a positive reflection on all the buy-in from partners. I think the bus action plan as well evidenced the amount that's been invested, both thanks through to funding provided nationally, but also local investment, often, or a large chunk of which has been contributed through Nestrans, which we're grateful that's provided the support to councils to bring forward improvements across the network. And then there's new opportunities around the Bus Infrastructure Fund, and our work through the plan allows us to potentially go forward and springboard off that to make bus even better in the region.
Yeah, because I think in every meeting I've gone to in Nestrans over the years, whether it's the lack of buses in the Shire or trying to get people out of their cars, I genuinely think buses for our region is where we should be putting a lot more investment, and whether that's in the city or actually in the Shire. So I would very much want to keep the focus on bus going forward.
Martin?
Yeah, it's really good to see the bus improvement proposals and actions. I'm just going back a couple of reports to the monitoring report. There's mention of increased bus journey times, and I'm just wondering if that's just a kind of a temporary blip. Is that just an acceptable part of bus journeys? Because I mean, I think the whole point of the improvement of bus improvement is more buses, quicker journey times. So just a little bit of explanation around that, I think might be useful.
Yeah, so thank you. I think it's interesting with the monitoring report is we have a sample of journeys which we use, which basically dictates across year to year the impact that has. And what can happen is you have small discrepancies, and that's due to the timetables usually, which means that there's usually been an increase of 15-20 minutes either way, unless there's been dramatic improvements in the network. But having produced the state of the network report as well, I think there was a clear indication across a longer period of time there has been a real increase and improvement in journey times. And I think it's important that we continue to keep that trend going, as obviously journey times play a key role in making bus an attractive mode for all.
Thank you. Miranda?
Thank you. It's just around affordability, ticketing and all of that. So under the sort of affordability banner, we have progressing, we have ongoing. I guess what is going on with around the affordability of bus travel, and we have had quite a lot of chat around seamless ticketing, etc. And I guess just looking for a bit more detail around that, if that's possible.
I think on the affordability point, it's an interesting point to make that ultimately it's a commercial decision of the operators to decide what fares to set. But through the bus service improvement partnership, there's an opportunity to have a real positive discussion on fares, and there's an opportunity through that to think about what we can do.
I'm not seeing any more hands. Are we happy to agree that report? Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to number 7, the progress report. Do we have any questions on that? Can we take that as agreed? Thank you very much. Item 9, moving on to item 8.1, the draft Just Transition Plan for Transport. Can we get a short introduction from that, Claudia?
Thank you, Chair.
This report presents to the board the proposed response to the Scottish Government's consultation on the draft Just Transition Plan for Transport in Scotland for consideration and approval for submission. The plan recognises that the changes involved in Scotland transitioning towards net zero require to be fair and equitable, ensuring that the costs and benefits of the transition are distributed fairly and equitably. The proposed Nestrans response highlights the urgency to act and the need for it, as well as the required scale of the change to be better reflected in the vision and the objectives of the plan. The need for a more nuanced appreciation of both rural and urban Scotland and the subsequently unique, varied and sometimes complex needs of those communities and the implications for the plan and the proposed actions. The response further highlights the need for targeting actions at those populations and locations where they are most likely to have the greatest impact on the proposed targets. And subsequently, the response notes that this will require a review of what is delivered where, when, and how by all delivery partners, including the Scottish Government. The response also notes that this is also likely to require significant additional investment out with urban areas of Scotland relative to addressing the targets, such as with most car kilometres being driven in rural areas, while most air quality and health problems are being seen in urban areas. Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire have clearly articulated the role that they will be playing in the transition towards net zero in Scotland, and indeed the United Kingdom, with the North East not being just a participant but a leader on this pathway. The proposed response reiterates Nestrans' willingness to continue to work with the Scottish Government and to be part of and contribute to an informed conversation on this matter at national level. The board is asked to approve the proposed response for submission. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. I'll just echo the point you made there about the North East being a leader in the journey to net zero, not just a participant, and I think it's particularly important for our city and our region's aspirations on that front. Do we have any questions on that paper at all? Martin.
Yeah, it's I think the consultation is very helpful. I think all of the feedback is accurate, factual. It's all positive, and it's really helpful in particular to repeat that key distinction between rural and urban transport. That's all really important. It was just kind of it's a kind of a what next question, because the what we're looking at is feeding into the national policy and the aim of cutting emissions. So are we going to have further engagement on this? It would just be useful just to know what next steps are.
Yeah, this is actually we were looking back in our papers and we realised that 2 years ago we'd already done a consultation on the Scottish Government's draft transition plan for transport in the form of a letter to the minister. So here we have again another document which we've provided feedback to. We're hopeful that this will then lead to a finalised document around some of the key issues on this one. I would say at the moment, though, that Scottish Government's policy on car use reduction targets is in a degree of flux related to the outcomes of the Audit Scotland report, which I reported on at the last board, in terms of the demands for a clearer delivery plan, setting out, an actual plan that is clearly articulated in terms of how that's going to work. So I think that this will feed into that revised policy position, which is awaiting the climate change policy advice to Scottish ministers. And I think we're needing to prepare ourselves for how that policy might change. So this will feed into a national picture. It will trickle down into a regional position that we will need to make. We will be asked questions about how we get to contribute, both in rural and urban areas. And it's important that we have the evidence to be able to substantiate our position on that one going forward.
Thank you very much. I think it is a very serious and productive dialogue that's underway, and I think it's particularly helpful that we've got the opportunity to influence nationally, because there is that concern about uniformity of view, and I think that we will be able to make a difference through this discussion. But yeah, it needs to be ongoing, and I think that we have been fairly innovative in the Northeast with green transport innovations and proposals. So yeah, it's a two-way dialogue. So I mean, we can't just expect to get all the answers. We also have to give feedback as well. That's great. Thank you.
Sandra?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Michael whether if we know if the constituent local authorities have put in a similar or response, maybe not similar to ours, but
I'm looking at the chief officers from constituent local authorities if they want to feed in.
So yes, in short, yes, we've been contributing to the both this response and then linking into our own responses back in as well. So there's a common approach to that. So.
Do we have any other questions at all? No. Are we happy to agree that paper then? Thank you very much. Now moving on to item 8.2, publications and consultations. Do we have any questions on that? Are we agreed? Happy days. We're moving on. Number 9, information bulletin. Do we have any questions on that? Nope. Agreed. Agreed. Item 10, conferences and presentations. Do we have any questions? Are we agreed? Noted. Yep. And finally, number 11, pending business reports for future meetings. Paul, can you give us a quick talk through of this?
Yeah, sure. Basically, the last board meeting, or the one even before that, the board members were looking to look at go out and about and to see projects and issues on those ones. We've had the opportunity to go to Huntley, and I'm sure those who were able to go enjoyed that opportunity. The feedback was positive. The other thought that we had was to have the next board meeting in Ellen, where we have an opportunity not only to see the wonderful new facility at 4 Martin House that Aberdeenshire Council have, but also to see some facilities that Nestrans have contributed to. That could include the park and ride site and some of the recent upgrading there, but also some active travel facilities that have been put in place within in and around Ellen Town Centre. The facilities at 4 Martin House are fully hybrid, and so if you're not able to attend, we can dial you in and hopefully execute the meeting in the same manner as we do in the townhouse. And we will, if the board are happy, we will then commence the more detailed planning of that in terms of transport as necessary, other support that members might need to execute that going forward.
Do you have any comments, or are we happy with that? Yep, happy to agree, and think that's the end of the meeting. Just double checking. On that note, then I'll end the business and thank you for your time today.